In 1995 summer, China deployed numerous troops to Fujian province. They began missile tests, broadcasting them on television, and initiated widely broadcasted combat drills resembling an invasion across the 130-kilometer strait to Taiwan. China views Taiwan not as an independent nation, but as a defiant province from an unresolved civil conflict. Another set of Chinese military exercises near Taiwan raised concerns in the US and elsewhere. This posturing by China was in response to Taiwan's president seeking a U.S. visa, which the U.S. Congress approved, challenging Beijing and its sovereignty over Taiwan. Moreover, Taiwan was on the brink of its inaugural democratic election, marking the first time a Chinese leader was elected freely in 5,000 years. On the Friday preceding Taiwan's presidential election, China declared new military drills. China's displeasure was evident, considering Taiwan as its territory. Amidst this tension, potential diplomatic issues arose between China and the U.S. In a significant show of force, the U.S. military, under President Bill Clinton, dispatched its most advanced military assets to the region, navigating through the Taiwan Strait. This was U.S.'s most substantial military presence in Asia since the Vietnam War, countering China's attempts to threaten Taiwan. The intent of the message was unmistakable. China, we have greater strength than you, so step back and let Taiwan proceed. And the outcome? It was successful. China retreated, and the U.S. re-established its dominance on the global stage, a force that remains unchallenged. Fast forward to the recent past, much has evolved over approximately 2 decades, and China is once again exerting pressure on Taiwan. Their recent tactic involves sending military planes into Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. An ADIZ is a region where incoming aircraft must identify themselves or the adjacent nation might perceive a threat. China has been dispatching military planes into this zone without prior notice or identification. It's not an isolated incident, but a frequent occurrence, multiple times daily and hundreds monthly. These represent the actual routes of Chinese planes traversing Taiwan's ADIZ. Returning to China, it's a blatant show of dominance to Taiwan. Thankfully, comprehensive data exists on each of these Chinese incursions. Taiwan's defense was on high alert again today. This data originates from the Foreign Policy Research Institute, shedding light on China's movements in Taiwan's ADIZ. A significant increase in flyovers was observed late the previous year. A chart depicts each instance of a Chinese aircraft entering Taiwan's ADIZ in 2021. A notable spike is evident in early October. During this period, China celebrated its inception, sending a direct message to Taiwan, "You will belong to us." That same week, a Chinese state-run media outlet published a headline emphasizing the reality of war and warning Taiwan. Unfair actions have taken place. Guess who arrives in the region to stabilize the situation? A U.S. warship navigates the Taiwan Strait. The U.S. dispatches guided missile destroyers through the Taiwan Strait shortly after significant flyovers by Taiwan's allies. Despite 25 Chinese aircraft entering the defense zone, this tactic didn't yield the desired result. Observing the timeline, the U.S.'s passage through the strait is followed by China intensifying its flyovers over Taiwan's ADIZ. The frequency of these flyovers escalates, occurring nearly daily. Times have evolved since the 90s. The dynamics have shifted, and sending naval ships to the Taiwan Strait doesn't guarantee China's retreat as it might have in Bill Clinton's era. The contemporary landscape is marked by China's bolstered military strength over the past 2 decades. Coupled with this is China's escalating ambition to integrate Taiwan with the mainland. The contrast in China's responses between the 90s and the recent past is crucial in anticipating potential conflicts in the region. China aims to envision a potential war involving Taiwan. The probability of such a conflict is growing annually. The subsequent discussion is an informed projection of a war in the Taiwan Strait, potentially involving the U.S. and its allies. China is escalating its hostility towards Taiwan and points fingers at the U.S. Beijing's stance on Taiwan has become increasingly stringent. China's potential invasion of Taiwan is rooted in a Chinese law designed to prevent any region of China from seceding. This law specifically references Taiwan. It essentially states that if Taiwan seeks independence from China, or, crucially, if all peaceful reunification options are deemed unviable, China is mandated to use non-peaceful methods and other necessary actions to uphold its sovereignty and territorial integrity. In simpler terms, if diplomatic efforts fail, China is legally obligated to invade Taiwan and compel its reunification. Decades have passed with peaceful solutions proving ineffective. Concurrently, in Taiwan, the desire for reunification is at its lowest. This diminishes the prospect of a peaceful reunion, making the law's interpretation lean towards a forceful approach by China. This legal standpoint, combined with China's significantly enhanced military since the 90s, is alarming. The Pentagon is increasingly wary of China's military expansion, which now boasts advanced missiles, tanks, helicopters, submarines, and ships. The U.S. government has expressed concerns in a recent report, highlighting that the Chinese Navy's fleet, with 360 ships, surpasses the U.S. Navy's 297. While it's important to note that U.S. ships are generally larger, China's rapid military expansion has alarmed the U.S. defense community. I believe this issue is more imminent than many realize and demands immediate attention. China's increasing pressure on Taiwan has heightened concerns about a potential invasion, as Taiwan's reunification with China remains a top strategic goal for Beijing. Many might wonder about the possible scenario of a conflict. Imagine a situation where China believes that the only way to bring Taiwan under its control, a legal obligation, is through force. Previous tactics like blockades and negotiations have failed. An initial assault on Taiwan might appear as a routine airspace violation, something China has done numerous times. However, in this scenario, the fighter jet unexpectedly targets the island. Concurrently, China launches missiles from its mainland and dispatches more aircraft, all coordinating a swift and intense attack. The primary objective would be to incapacitate Taiwan's defense capabilities, targeting radar systems, military bases, communication networks, bridges, power stations, and even government infrastructures. Taiwan would face a diverse range of targets that could effectively impede its operations. Unfortunately, many of these targets are highly visible and difficult to conceal, such as exposed runways. The initial attack would occur rapidly, concentrating on a short time frame as a prelude to invasion. Military experts succinctly stated that there would be no minimal breaks between attacks, except for necessary equipment movement, reloading, and repairs. This challenging situation prompts Taiwan's leaders to seek shelter in an underground command bunker in order to plan their response. Fortunately, not all of Taiwan's military targets can be eliminated. Some aircraft hangars are situated deep in the mountains, and certain missile sites are expertly camouflaged, allowing them to avoid bombardment. This grants Taiwan the capability to retaliate, potentially deploying air power and launching missiles towards mainland China, targeting air bases, radar systems, and military installations. Concurrently, Taiwan reinforces its western beaches by deploying troops and laying mines in anticipation of an imminent influx of Chinese forces crossing the strait. All of this transpires within a span of a few hours, while the United States is just starting to learn about the situation. China likely disrupts communication channels, hindering the ability of the U.S. to obtain a clear understanding of the events, thereby delaying their response time. Complicating matters further, China has developed proficiency in deploying small satellites to service their own satellites in space. Conflict in space is not considered a feasible part of the scenario, therefore, the United States is working to catch up and understand the situation. The president and military leaders must now determine their response. The question arises, should they risk American lives to protect a distant island? Even though it may not be popular with the American public, they are compelled to take action and formulate a plan. Meanwhile, in the Taiwan Strait, China has inflicted severe damage to Taiwan's military assets and is mobilizing hundreds of thousands of troops and abundant supplies across the 130-kilometer stretch of water. Utilizing various types of boats, including military and merchant vessels that face no substantial defense from Taiwan, China transports significant quantities of supplies and troops. However, on Taiwan's western beaches, Taiwan's troops have likely deployed mines in anticipation of the invasion. As a result, a battle ensues on the beaches as Chinese amphibious forces attempt to land and push back the Taiwanese defenders. Assuming Taiwan refuses to surrender to China and continues to resist, the United States begins its response, likely from bases in the region such as Japan and Guam. They deploy aircraft carriers equipped with jets, bombers, and stealth fighters, as well as fast attack submarines, with the objective of targeting the ships transporting personnel and supplies across the strait. Japan and Australia may join as allies to support the defense efforts. Consequently, the United States and its allies are now engaged in direct combat with China, two nuclear-armed nations fighting each other. The escalation of war is unpredictable, especially when nuclear weapons are involved, which adds a terrifying element. In a hypothetical situation, China could potentially strike first by targeting US bases in Japan and Guam simultaneous to their initial attacks in Taiwan. This provocative move would undoubtedly lead the US to engage in a full-scale war with China. As Chinese troops successfully push back Taiwanese defenses on the western beaches and advance towards major cities, the US is engaged in naval and aerial combat. Beyond this point, it becomes incredibly difficult to foresee the next course of events, as much depends on US's tolerance for casualties. It's also worth noting that the Chinese military thinkers envision additional complexities in this scenario, as they anticipate India taking advantage of the chaos by invading the Himalayan borders to the south and Tibetan freedom fighters in the west rising up against Chinese rule. The unfolding of events could potentially engulf the entire region, involving numerous countries and resulting in immense loss of life. However, it is crucial to recognize that this description is highly speculative and should be taken with caution. It is important to mention this potential invasion scenario for Taiwan not because it is the most likely outcome, but because it highlights an extreme possibility. In reality, China is more likely to exert pressure on Taiwan through blockades or other forms of coercion to bring them to the negotiation table. The commencement of an unlikely global conflict hinges on China's decision to invade Taiwan, which would set off a domino effect of military interventions and strategic alliances across the globe. War does not determine who is right, only who is left. Bertrand Russell.